Morning. Hey, I'm a little too wide. Kim here, Papa's Fix-It Shop. I think this is going to be number 2 of Chingaderas and Jesus Clubs. So, I often get little things I want to talk about, and it's just short. And if I add several together, it won't be too long. So that's why I'm doing it. Today I'm going to talk about repurposing things. Stuff that you encounter, call it recycling. In my case, I have a propane foundry burner that I can melt aluminum and brass with, and I use it to make small parts and sand casting. And that process involves looking for aluminum to melt, right? So since I was in a pretty much a fleet shop or some other kind of auto repair my whole life, I used to just collect old aluminum parts in case I could recycle them, sell it, and make some money, help support the family, whatever. Well, I've gotten over the many years quite a few of these compressors for air conditioning in a car. This one is particularly it's a GM type for like vans and trucks, pickups. Some of the bigger cars are pretty similar, and it's unremarkable, except when you take it apart, you find some neat stuff. So this is basically the body, and this is essentially 2 pistons on opposite ends of a rod, and they sit inside here, and they go back and forth like this, and it pumps the air, pumps the refrigerant. This guy, I don't know if you can see it. Let me get around where I can tell. See, there's a little spherical socket inside that piston assembly. There's also a bunch of pretty nice little roller or thrust bearings, hardened washers and flat roller thrust bearings. But there's 5 pistons. Each one has 2 sockets for one of these. So there you go. This is basically a hemispherical piece of very hard steel. I don't know what it is. I don't know how to find out. I imagine GM knows. In any case, this little thing is it's like half of a hardened ball bearing, and they are precise. So I use them in the milling vise. If I have an irregular piece, I put one of these against the irregular piece, and I usually put the flattest side to the fixed jaw, and then put one of these out here on the moving jaw, so it kind of helps you clamp an irregular piece of metal. So if you're a machinist and you run into irregular stuff for like a bandsaw or anything that you got to clamp in a vise, look for an old GM air compressor for a pickup or something and take it apart, and you'll find 10 of these inside each of those compressors. I like them. The other thing is, this is in the category of fabric cobble and stuff. There's a blight in America. If you look on the roofs, there are satellite dishes. Millions of satellite dishes. And a lot of them, it's obvious they don't work. So if anybody ever tells you, can you help me get that off? Or you see one and you want to look at it, you might think about it. If you're the kind of guy that likes to mock up stuff, cobble things together for a one-off project where you might look for some piece of metal with the right characteristics. So look at this. What I have in my hand is the adjuster for one of those satellite dishes. And it's, it's pretty complex. It's kind of neat. It pivots back and forth. But on the side, it has, as you see, a radius slot, which looks like 35 or 45 degree indicator already put on it. It's also got a very nifty little jack screw that you can use to adjust something. So it has it on both sides. So if you need a bracket and you've got it looking for a slot, you got that. And then here's a bigger one on the base of it. This guy on that satellite dish mount, see if I can see it. There it is. Goes from 40 degrees to 140 degrees. You got a 100-degree indicator, but there's this really nice, almost perfectly round slot. And a thing like that can be used for lots of stuff. Simple light bracket, some level indicator. You can make some homemade square, lots of stuff. You could even use it for a template if you want it on something. So those two things are kind of stuff that are laying around. I mean, recyclers won't pay a lot for a compressor from an automobile compared to aluminum cans because they got hardened steel and rubber, and there's bearing races in here, so they don't like them. They'll take them, but they won't pay very much for them. So the rest of this stuff, I just use it because I melt it down. But they're just laying around. There's roofs with these guys. I see them all the time with these things up there with the wires hanging off or the dish all tilted. And there's something you can use if you're trying to fabricable something, which we all know that sometimes we're going to fabricable something. Most often, if we got a theory and we want to make a working model, and we know the working model doesn't have to be able to take all of the forces that will be impacted on it in the final product, but we want to make sure that it does what we think it's going to do. Is it going to move this direction, X amount of degrees? Is it going to be such that it won't interfere with some other part of the device or the mechanism we're working on? And so once that's perfect, we not only have tested that the function and the form of it should be close enough, but we also have templates that we can use to duplicate the final product, which might be a lot more thicker, different type of metal, whatever. You might build it out of aluminum or cardboard and then finally out of steel. So that's all it's about. And these little guys, those are wonderful things. You get to use in your milling machine or vise of any kind. Okay, last bit on this episode of Chingaderas and Jesus Clips. I'm gonna have a video coming out pretty quick. I got this thing. Let me show it to you. Get it to focus. It's a little brass fitting. When you have a little fix-it shop in a neighborhood, people come by, and my son and a bunch of his friends play around with a thing called a GoPed. It's a motorized skateboard with a steering wheel on it. To me it seems kind of like horrifically dangerous, but hey, everybody's got their own way of doing, you know. In any event, these things have plastic gas tanks, kind of like a weed whacker motor on a skateboard, and they're really fast. But the gas tank on them, where the fuel lines hook up, it originally they got like a plastic fitting, and the hose goes on there. Basically, you route this hose all the way up through the bottom of the tank, out the filler neck. You put this fitting on it, and then you pull it back down through, and when it gets up to the hole in the plastic tank, this little nipple with the hose on it is slightly too big to go through there, so you have to force it in there and it seals it all up. Well, time and use, whatever, these plastic fittings take a crap, and you got to kind of find some way to work on it. This one is actually an off-the-shelf vacuum fitting that somebody tried to use to fix it, and it worked for a while, but then it stopped working, which is why I made one of these for the one my son rides. And I'm going to bring this over here. So I basically got my measuring tools out and I measured this guy. So you see it on top, the original one, all the sizes. And then down below I made one just a hair bigger. You can see the differences, 0.5 millimeter here or there. Made it a little fatter. And that's what this is. So I'm going to have another video of me making that. It'll come out real soon. But it got me to the point where I thought I might explain something. Whoever my viewers are, and I need to say thank you for actually paying attention and looking at my videos. But whoever you are, you might know what a Chingadera is, and you might know what a Jesus clip is, or you may not. Or you may have some explanation for it that isn't the one that I learned when I was a little squirt working for the master guys, the machinists, the mechanics, and the fabricators that I learned from. So, in case you don't know, I live in Arizona, Yuma, Arizona, way the heck down on the border. Look at a map, you see California over here, and then you see Arizona right here. Mexico's down below. You go down in that far little corner, you're going to find out where I live. And Chingadera is a colloquial term used by the Mexican people that I grew up with, Mexican Americans, Hispanics, whatever they call them. To me, they're the people over here before us white people were here. So it's actually their place. It's their land. In any event, a Chingadera is based on a Spanish word that I'm not going to say. It's kind of like if it was in English, you would start with an F and then some like asterisks and characters. In other words, it describes a sexual act. But that's not what it means when it's something like this. To them, it's when if any of you have ever worked in a shop, whatever shop, I don't care, plumber, anything, plumbers, electricians, mechanics, engineers, welders, fabricators, machinists, there's this weird little part somewhere. In fact, there's thousands of weird little parts, and when you're looking for them, you can't remember what they exactly are called, or the person you're talking to doesn't know what the word you're using means. It's just a little friggin' part, some little stupid thing. An effing part, usually small. Donde está esta chingadera? Would be like, where is that little thing I just had? Anyway, so that's a Chingadera. Call it a widget. A Jesus clip, I only experienced it in places where people work on complex machinery, which is what I did. And it could be any kind of stationary equipment, mobile equipment, cars, trucks, generators, light plants, water pumps, machine tools. Because I was this guy, whenever something went wrong with one of the big tools, they're like, get him over there. Try to figure out how to take it apart and fix it. And the first time I ever heard it was with a snap ring that my master was taking off. It was in the 70s. And I was being instructed in how to disassemble something, and a snap ring was being removed from a drive shaft of all things. And while it was being removed with a pair of snap ring pliers and got just clear of the position where it mounts down inside a machined groove, so it was under tension in this pair of snap ring pliers, and it came out and went bing, and I was instructed to be very quiet for a moment. And then my master looked around and said, Jesus, and, you know, he said, did you hear where that Jesus clip went? Did you hear it land? And I was confused. I was like, what? And he explained to me that when something flies off, drops off, gets blown off, let's say you're blowing out some valve you thought you took all the parts out of and something flies out the end, like a spring. If you've ever done that, you would say to yourself, possibly, Jesus, where did that go? Or, Jesus, I hope I can find that. Or, Jesus, I hope that that part's even available if I can't find it. So that's the Jesus clip. So, little things and lost things, and, you know, it's just a catchy name for the title. So, if you like, click like. If you got a comment, make a comment. Appreciate you watching. And stay tuned for my little GoPed fuel tank fitting or something like that. Should be fun. It's mostly lathe. It's just a whole bunch of work on the lathe. So if you like watching things spinning and chips flying, this will be a good video for you. Thanks again.